The urge doesn't come back because you failed. It comes back because nothing replaced it. At night, your brain runs whatever pattern is most practiced. Philippians 4:8 gives a replacement system, but most people never apply it in the moment. You already decided earlier that you would stop, but now it is late and everything is quiet. There is no distraction, no interruption, no competing input. Your brain defaults to the loop it knows best because that loop has been repeated more times in this exact condition. James 1:14 describes this precisely. Each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own desire and enticed. That process starts internally before any action happens. The urge is not random, it is a sequence already in motion. Proverbs 4:23 explains why this repeats. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. If the input is not controlled, the output repeats automatically. At night, there are fewer competing signals, so the strongest pattern rises without resistance. The brain is not choosing in that moment, it is executing what has already been installed. This is why stopping during the day feels easier and stopping at night feels automatic. If nothing interrupts the loop, it continues toward the same result every time. At night, the environment is not just quieter, it is more predictable. The same position, the same device, the same time window creates a repeated cue that the brain recognizes instantly. Proverbs 27:19 says, "As water reflects the face, so one's life reflects the heart," which means your repeated patterns become visible in your actions. What you are seeing at night is not a new problem, it is a reflection of what has been practiced consistently. The brain links these cues together so tightly that the moment you enter that environment, the loop begins before you even notice it. This is why the urge can feel like it appears suddenly, even though it was already building in the background. The system is not waiting for a decision, it is completing a sequence that has already started. Ephesians 4:22 describes this as being corrupted by deceitful desires, which means the pattern feels convincing even when you already decided against it. The feeling of urgency is not proof that the urge is stronger, it is proof that the pathway is familiar. Familiar patterns require less effort, so they feel more natural and more difficult to interrupt. This is why hesitation makes the urge stronger, because the loop is given more time to continue without interference. The longer it runs, the more momentum it builds, and the more automatic the outcome becomes. This is why immediate interruption matters more than delayed resistance. If you wait even a short time before replacing the input, the loop strengthens and becomes harder to redirect. The moment you recognize the pattern, you are already inside it, and the only way out is to insert a competing input that is strong enough to interrupt the sequence. The urge feels stronger at night because the loop is running without interruption, not because it has more power. Your brain always selects the most repeated input available, and at night that input becomes internal instead of external. During the day, your attention is divided, so multiple signals compete and weaken the loop. At night, that competition disappears, so the strongest installed pattern takes control. Romans 7:15 describes this experience. "I do not understand what I do, for what I want to do I do not do, but what I hate I do." This is not confusion, it is pattern execution without interruption. The brain is designed to conserve effort, so it reuses the most repeated pathway instead of creating a new one. Each repetition lowers resistance in that pathway, which is why the urge feels automatic over time. This is why ignoring the urge fails, because ignoring does not replace the loop. Colossians 3:2 gives the correction, "Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things." Setting the mind is an active process, not a passive state. If no new input is introduced, the brain has nothing else to select, so it returns to the same pattern. What you are experiencing is not lack of control, it is a system running exactly as it was trained. Philippians 4:8 provides the exact replacement mechanism for this moment. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, think about such things. This instruction matches how your brain already works. It replaces one input with another. The loop is not stopped by force, it is replaced by selection. Romans 12:2 explains the process. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Renewal happens through repeated replacement, not a single decision. The more you repeat the new input, the more the brain shifts what it selects automatically. Joshua 1:8 gives the repetition pattern. Keep this book of the law always on your lips and meditate on it day and night. That includes the exact moment the urge appears. Speaking and focusing on the same input repeatedly installs a new pathway. James 4:7 defines the result. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. Resistance here is not passive avoidance, it is active replacement of input. When the input changes, the loop loses its fuel and cannot continue at the same intensity. Your brain is not trying to create a new decision in that moment, it is selecting the most repeated input available. Proverbs 23:7 states this principle, as a man thinks within himself, so he becomes, which describes how repeated internal input shapes behavior over time. The brain links time, environment, and behavior into one automatic sequence. When those conditions repeat, the sequence activates without needing conscious approval. Romans 8:5 explains this direction. Those who live according to the flesh have their minds set on what the flesh desires. Setting the mind is repeated focus that installs a default direction. When you introduce a new input through speaking and focused attention, you activate a different pathway. 2 Corinthians 10:5 describes this interruption. Take captive every thought and make it obedient. Capturing the thought means you do not let it continue automatically. You replace it with a controlled input. If that new input is repeated consistently, the brain begins to recognize it as the new default. Over time, the original urge loses intensity because it is no longer the most practiced pathway. This is how repetition changes what feels automatic, not by removing the urge instantly, but by replacing what the mind is set on. When the urge appears at night, you do not try to ignore it. You replace it immediately with a controlled input. The action is simple and specific. You speak one short scripture out loud for 5 minutes without stopping. You are not thinking it passively. You are actively speaking it to override the existing loop. Use one verse only so the input stays consistent. For example, Philippians 4:8 or 2 Corinthians 10:5. The goal is not understanding. The goal is repetition. As soon as the urge starts, you begin speaking the verse at a steady pace and keep your attention on the words. If the mind drifts, you bring it back to the exact words and continue. Joshua 1:8 defines this method. Keep it on your lips and meditate on it day and night. This is the exact moment that instruction applies. You are inserting a new input into the same environment where the old loop normally runs. Do not wait for the urge to pass. You interrupt it while it is active. Do not switch verses and do not change the wording. Repeat this every night the urge appears for at least 21 days. The repetition weakens the old pathway and installs a new one. You are not trying to remove the urge instantly. You are training the brain to select a different pathway in that exact moment. This works because repetition changes what the mind selects automatically, not because the urge disappears immediately. Galatians 6:7 describes this principle. A man reaps what he sows. What you repeat is what grows stronger over time. Every time you interrupt the urge with the same spoken input, you are reinforcing a different pathway. Hebrews 5:14 explains how patterns become automatic. By constant use, they have trained themselves. Training happens through repeated execution, not intention. Over time, the urge loses intensity because it is no longer the most practiced pathway. 1 Corinthians 10:13 confirms the outcome. God provides a way out so that you can endure it. The way out is not avoidance. It is a repeatable interruption that changes the pattern. If you stay consistent, the moment that used to trigger the urge will begin to trigger the new input. When the urge appears at night, you follow the same sequence every time without variation. You start speaking one verse out loud immediately and continue for 5 minutes without stopping. You use the same verse each time so the input becomes recognizable to the brain. Psalm 119:11 explains the goal. I have hidden your word in my heart so that I might not sin against you, which happens through repetition. If the urge remains, repeat another 5 minutes without changing the input. Do this every time the urge appears for at least 21 days. After 30 days, the intensity begins to drop because the old loop is no longer dominant. After 66 days, the new pattern becomes automatic in that environment.
2 Timothy 1:7 reinforces the result. God gave a spirit not of fear, but of power, love, and self-control, which becomes visible through repeated execution. The system is fixed. Replace the input, repeat it daily, and the pattern changes over time.